Hey everyone, happy to be here with you guys today. I have another special presentation for you all. I am here today with Stefano. Stefano is one of my recent clients who has done remarkably well, and we wanted to record this conversation today to get Stefano's story out into the world because his story is a very classic example of an acoustic trauma that triggered a really bad and significant onset of tinnitus, along with pretty significant phonophobia, fear of sound, dysacusis, some like distortion of sound, and some sound sensitivity as well. And it sort of rocked his world and came on very suddenly. So I have Stefano here today to tell his story because here we are few months later and he's his everything is back to normal now. And I know a lot of you out there are dealing with tinnitus and sensitivity related to an acoustic trauma. So I thought this was going to be a really important story to share with you all. So Stefano, first of all, thank you so much for
No
for
problem.
being here with us today.
That's
Um,
great.
I wanted to start off by having you kind of share a little bit about what what that moment was like
Okay.
when this all started, because I know there's a little bit of context here too. Like you had for a long time
Yeah.
had been traveling internationally and living and
hmm
working abroad in places like Kazakhstan and Taiwan and Portugal,
Yeah.
and you were finally back in the States living in a very different kind of environment after many years of international travel when this
hmm
happened. So what was life like at that time, and walk us through that moment where you had the acoustic trauma and how it felt and sort of what happened next, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Great to be here. I think I had just come back from Kazakhstan where I was teaching English in the capital in Astana, and I came back to pursue my teaching certification, which is what I continue to do throughout. I've done for continue to pursue that
Sure.
even after this experience, which has rocked my world. So when this happened, I was kind of in a bit of I was in a bubble, in a little bit of a narrow space, appropriately so, because I was just focused on coursework and going to the library and studying for exams, all of which I've since passed. But a narrow life. I hadn't lived in the US for years, lived abroad, felt safe, let my guard down in spaces.
Yeah.
Portugal, I always felt safe. I didn't have any. I've never had anything like that, like this, that's rocked my world, and I just, I felt free. So yeah, it was a major reverse culture shock.
Yeah.
And basically, I had moved. I'm in the Baltimore area now, from Baltimore County to Carroll County, which is suburban rural. Um, and I'm not from the Baltimore area. Um, I live and work here now as I continue to move through things, but I just was not familiar geographically how things are sort of, put together here.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm from the Philadelphia area, to 45 minutes outside of a major city in the US, that people can fire off shots on their property and nobody cares, or nobody's going to do anything about it. Who knows, right?
And I know you
And
mentioned too, like prior to the incident that we're going to talk about, that you're going to talk about in just a
yeah,
second,
yeah.
you had heard some just kind of shots going off in the distance in the neighborhood, like some of your neighbors presumably just firing off rifle rounds or something. So this was like in your mind, like, oh God, like they just shoot guns around here, and sort of being a
Yeah,
concerning thought. I know coming into this moment, so I just want to throw that in there.
absolutely. I wasn't I'm in a different part of Baltimore County now, although it's a bit different than where I was before. I wasn't, I wanted to get out of the last place where I was living before this happened, just due to this sort of factors pushing me out. But yeah, I remember walking in my car and I had heard shots in the distance, and I thought it was like pistol fire or something less, because I just didn't, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just somebody's got a little 9 mil and he's just doing what he's doing on his porch, and it's still weird and it's still
Yeah.
freaky. But if he doesn't try to directly bother me,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it alone.
Sure. But then you were walking to your car.
So, gray February morning, Eldersburg, Maryland, to be specific. Walking to my car, going to Dunkin' Donuts, get some coffee. I walk out. The yard is sort of, there's some foliage, there's a bit of hills, there's some trees. There's a few homes in the distance. There's not just like wide woods back there. There's other people's homes, say within about 100 to 150 feet.
Sure.
So,
So not that rural. Like, right.
no, it's bizarre.
Probably not a very safe place to be firing off.
Absolutely not, especially because there's a major thoroughfare
Mm,
right behind. But this is the US. Anyway, um, walk into my car and my body, I was passing the right passenger door of my car and I was, making that left to go around the front of my hood to get into the vehicle. All of a sudden, there's this boom. And my best guess, because I did ask the landlord and they weren't honest with me or they just didn't want to give me answers or whatever, it's not
yeah.
important, but it must have been like a 50 caliber rifle or something huge
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that was not, it was gigantic and
Yeah.
that shot, the noise just, it was instant. It was like a tidal wave, almost like water, like inundated my ear.
Yeah. I
And it
remember you
just,
saying it just instant fullness,
oh yeah,
instant pressure, and also instant panic and fear as
oh
well
yeah,
at the moment.
absolutely. No ringing,
Right.
but that fullness, the panic and the pressure and the fear, right? Fight or flight mode immediately. Like this is scary as heck. Like, am I next?
Yeah.
So, we don't know that.
Yeah.
It's the
Sure.
body.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, too, it's like you hear a gunshot and then there's this like massive physiological reaction in the side of your head. It's like it's terrifying,
yeah.
right? Like it's way too close for comfort. So
Oh yeah.
I know you were panicked in that moment and then I think you sought some medical attention fairly quickly to check your hearing and to see what was going on. And it wasn't
Yeah.
so you can speak to that if you want, but also I know it wasn't until a few days later, maybe like
Yeah.
close to a week later, where the fullness
Hmm.
finally was sort of ebbing away, but then the tinnitus starts in that moment. So am I remembering correctly? Did you get medical attention right away, like after that, after the
I
exposure?
did follow through with that fairly quickly and just to get in like yeah, it is not like the movies or television or anything like that
Yeah,
at all. It is much more a dose of reality and I hope if you haven't been through this that you never ever have to go through it. But so luckily I had been to an audiologist, local audiologist, very nice, a few weeks before and she did a hearing test. And I didn't even realize how great that was because I had a baseline before and after this happened. And a lot of people who, they're up close with firearms and they suffer hearing loss, they don't have any baseline.
yeah,
And it's really hard to measure. So I immediately wrote to her and I was just like, this happened and I approximate the distance. I had no idea who was out there, where it was coming from. And she said, basically, this could have damaged your hearing. We need to get you in.
yeah,
So I go in and I took a hearing test and I was in the booth and yeah, you know how it is in the hearing booth. It's claustrophobic, but you're paying attention, you're pressing the button, you are following the prompts and listening to her voice or whoever's conducting it. And I just remember when that test was done, I just heard it over the microphone. She said, okay, stable.
mm,
And I didn't realize at that moment what that meant for me because it would take me months to get to a better place because
yeah,
I was still in why do I feel muffled? Why does this
yeah,
feel weird? Different fight or flight, anxious, danger, scared mode.
yeah.
But basically what she had confirmed, and I have since sought other medical attention. Just her advice is very valid, but just for my reassurance that I did not suffer hearing loss. Um, Something happened, but it did not result in hearing loss. It did result in the onset of tinnitus several days later. But yeah, so
So let's pick the story up there then. So
yeah,
finally it's like 4 or 5 days. It's like okay, whew, it's getting better. You're feeling the pressure and the fullness feeling is like easing up a little bit. So it's like a very
yeah,
good feeling. But
uh-huh,
then the tinnitus starts and then puts you in a whole nother world of hurt. And I know you were having like a lot of fluctuations there too. Like I know you were
yeah,
having some tonal sounds hissing, pulsing, or tonal and pulsing sounds initially, which
Mhm.
eventually morphed into more of like a high pitch hissing sound, I believe, in both ears. Like I know it changed a lot over time. Is what I'm
Yeah, for
saying here.
sure.
It
Yeah.
fluctuated a lot. So what was that like when the tinnitus started? How did that affect you?
It was strange. It was really, I believe that it was less than a week. Must have been like between 3 and 5 days after.
Yeah.
And the muffled feeling took forever. I mean, it was a very, very, very gradual, and I still have it to a very slight extent. I mean, I have to pay really hard attention and notice the
And it's only
discrepancy
in
between
very
ears.
specific sort of circumstances and
Oh
moments,
yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the tinnitus came on. It was much stronger, and I was, people, I think from what I've seen on YouTube have very strong reactions to it because a lot of people have never dealt with it in life before. And for me, it was more sounds than I have now. It has since calmed down a lot, but in the
Yeah.
beginning, I remember more high-pitched noises, more, more, still the hissing that I have now and a lot of noise before I went to bed at night.
Yeah.
And that's when, yeah, that was the initial onset. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I know it's just, you're
Yeah,
already dealing with so much and then just to have another problem like this pop up in the middle of all of the stress and anxiety you're experiencing over the muffled feeling,
right.
hypervigilance you're feeling, the fear of
Oh,
sound
yeah.
that you've developed as a result of this. It's just like another difficult problem on your plate. I also know that before we met, and first of all, I'm really happy to hear that it's calmed way down. That is something I
Yeah,
always see
right.
with habituation.
Thanks.
It always ends up calming down quite a lot. But I know that you saw some other medical professionals too. I think you sought out like an ENT, I believe,
Correct.
early on in the process, and I
Yes.
think I remember you telling me that it not only did it not help, but you just felt worse because suddenly it's like, well, now there's nothing I can do, right? Like you got the message that so many people get, which
Hmm.
is when an audiologist or ENT incorrectly says, there's nothing we can do about this, or time will
Right.
tell, or just try to ignore it, or just any other number of unhelpful things that
Hmm.
educated on tinnitus when doctors are uneducated on tinnitus, things they tend to
Sure.
say. So what was that experience like?
So yeah, just to make sure I get the correction in there, I've sought out help from two different
Hmm,
ENTs, one of whom I actually saw before this happened. He didn't conduct the hearing test, that was an audiologist, but
got it.
the second who I saw through University of Maryland, she's very helpful, but the first was through a local ENT clinic, and I took my hearing test results from the local audiologist, not from University of Maryland, to see him before I went to University of Maryland. And I was showing him here, I have these results. My audiologist says I'm stable. What does this mean? What does this mean? And he's basically like, well, people who have these incidents around firearms, they generally feel better in X amount of months. And I just keep asking him questions. And then I'm not dropping any names, okay? Because I realize he's a doctor and
Yeah, no,
everybody's
no,
got
there's no need for
reputation.
that. That's fine.
No,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
But it got to a point in the conversation where I'm asking worried medical questions, and then he comes back and he says, "You're not narrowing me down any longer," or whatever he said. And after that, he's like, the one thing that's for sure in life is that we're all going to die." And that's how the appointment ended.
That's so crazy.
That's how it ended.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with my first ENT early on in my Meniere's diagnosis. Like when the doctor starts yelling at you and saying things like that, I mean, it's what they're not seeing is that you're just scared and you're
Yeah.
just trying to understand this very scary thing that's happened to you. And the thing you're trying to process that like the information they're giving you and but just a lot of doctors just they see that as like a questioning of authority or something. I don't know. But I'm
Yeah,
sorry you went through
it
that. It's
was like a
difficult.
very ego-driven thing,
A lot of
completely.
people, in my experience of doing this, like almost everybody has some kind of story like this. Not this exact, story,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
some variation of this story. Okay, so eventually you're going through all this, um,
Mhm.
and then we start working together. And
Yeah.
I know when I was looking back at our notes, at my notes from our sessions, and I remember I asked you. how you were feeling now. Like, like kind of
Yeah.
give me a sense. And you said you were just it's interesting reading back. You said
Uh-huh.
that you felt completely overwhelmed, that the tinnitus was very up and down.
Oh yeah.
You were getting ready to move, but your anxiety and depression were all over the map, and you felt like you were experiencing like a true existential crisis. So just to
Yeah.
paint a picture for people of just how severely disruptive and difficult like this type of acoustic incident can be, right? Like how it just can completely upend your life entirely and just send you into like a total spiral of anxiety and depression.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but we got working together. We started helping you with, initially we began the
Mhm.
process of using the various meditation protocols that I teach, tinnitus focused meditation protocols that I teach to help you to start to facilitate the habituation process. We got some better plugging strategies and sound
Oh
exposure
yeah.
strategies in place, because another thing you were going through, which we should probably talk about for a minute, because so many people go through this when you have a
Mhm.
scary sound exposure like this, which causes such a major problem in your life, and
Mhm.
you become so fearful of sound, which is the sort of natural response in a situation like this.
Sure.
If sound is suddenly really scary and painful, well, it's natural to feel afraid and become avoidant, right? And develop this sort of fear
Mhm.
of sound, phonophobia. But the problem is that the sound avoidance led to sensitivity and led to it slowed things down for you initially, because the
Yes.
more you pull away from sound and you're not actually addressing the underlying problem here, which is the
Right.
nervous system is in this state of over activation and reaction to sounds. And by pulling
Yeah.
away from sound and just wearing plugs all the time out of fear, you end up deconditioning yourself to sound and increasing sensitivity rather than decreasing sensitivity. And so a big
Right.
part of our journey together wasn't just uh, helping you to habituate to the tinnitus, to calm the nervous system down, to help you desensitize the sound, but to help you deal with this hypervigilance you felt and to feel more
Mhm.
confident in the face of sound. Because a lot of what you were experiencing early on was more fear driven than sensitivity driven, I think. And
Yeah.
also, when you're dealing with dysacusis, like this idea that like you're hearing stuff and it sounds wrong, like the frequencies are wrong because of this muffled feeling. It's like everything just becomes a reminder of the problem and a trigger of the fear, right? So it all
Yeah.
becomes this crazy vicious cycle of there's all these different pathways that just keep activating the nervous system, and you just get stuck in this cycle. So
Mhm.
we were doing a lot of just changing up the plugging strategy so that you weren't just trying to block everything and avoid things all the time, helping you to start feeling more confident in the world. So tell I think maybe it would be interesting to talk about what your experience with the meditation was, and
Yeah.
also, as we work through, as I taught you all these various tools and strategies,
Mhm.
and ways to like approach the world, how things were changing, and how your mindset changed and what changed along the way. So as you were working through this process, like what were you going through? What was that like for you?
Um, in terms of from the beginning to sort of processing when we were working together.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
what once you got started with all the different protocols and the strategy that I had you do, like what was that
Yeah.
experience like for you?
Well, I think I just felt in the beginning, not from you, but just by life and all this, like the tinnitus and the
Yeah, yeah.
event, I felt that it was like being inundated by these feelings, fear and dread and like pain and anxiety and all this stuff at once. And then once we started, it's a very gradual process, but
Yes.
I had not practiced mindfulness and meditation before in daily life.
Yes.
And I didn't really realize, I had an older gentleman tell me not too long ago. I was taking some math lessons in order to pass an exam, and the gentleman who was my tutor's husband said, try meditation. Meditation's a blessing. And I was already working with you.
Yeah.
And, just those initial meditations with the background noise. And, I remember specifically from your guidance, the whole idea about because people who don't have tinnitus, you can focus on the breath or sensations in the body, and you can still do that with tinnitus. But the fact that you can focus on it as the center of your meditation is pretty revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's like it ends up being like the last thing. It's the thing your nervous system wants.
Right.
and is the last thing you would expect to work, right? Because like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
problem of
Oh yeah.
tinnitus can be distilled down to this idea that like you want to so badly to ignore it, and you are failing to do so effectively. And
Yeah.
often, like what happened with me when I developed tinnitus was I would try to meditate and focus on the breath, and I wasn't able to anymore suddenly. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't stop thinking about the tinnitus, and I lost my ability to meditate, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
but you finally stop fighting it and you try to do this, and it's
Right.
hard, but it's not hard for the reasons that people think. It ends up being like it's not hard to actually do it calmly. It's hard to
Right.
actually stay focused because once you give the brain what it's been trying to get you to do, it's just, hey, pay attention. You're in danger. Pay attention to this thing. And you do it. Now the brain just wanders off and you start to relax and the brain just starts thinking about other things because it suddenly realizes like everything's okay, right? In that moment, right? So yeah, it is pretty shocking the first couple times you try something like this and actually have it go well and you feel calm and relaxed at the end of it. And in your case too, I believe we you were utilizing my brainwave entrainment meditations as
Yeah.
well. And if anyone doesn't know
Hmm.
what brainwave entrainment is, I will make sure to I'll link to an article I wrote in the show notes on this video and on the post on the blog that goes into the science of what brainwave entrainment audio is. But brainwave entrainment is a highly sedating, highly mind-altering audio technology where just by listening to music or sound that has this embedded into it, you can cause a person to feel like very sedated and very relaxed and calm. And I have guided meditations that I created, guided tinnitus focus meditations with this technology, so that even if you've never meditated before or haven't done it consistently, or even if you are a consistent meditator, it helps you get into this deeper state of calm more reliably than you would have been able to achieve on your own. And it doesn't matter that you get there in this sort of, technology assisted way because you get there while you're doing the technique. So it ends up being like a shortcut and it's something I use oftentimes to help people get started. So I'm glad it went so well for you. It always is. I know for so many people like they sit down to do this, it's kind of like a scary idea to focus on the tinnitus, but all of a sudden
Yeah.
it goes in a way that you weren't expecting and you're able to relax a little bit and oftentimes the fear goes away too. And this is also true for phonophobia, right? And I know it's another thing I want to talk about for a minute because
Mm.
phonophobia for you was like a big part of this problem. Like there was a deep, deep fear of sound,
Yeah.
constant hypervigilance that you were going to get hit with another sound that would cause problems. This constant fear led to a little bit of increased sensitivity, and it would trigger sort of
Hmm.
reactive tinnitus spikes when you would get hit with a sound. It would trigger your anxiety and fight or flight to come back. And when
Yeah.
you're dealing with that kind of hypervigilance and fear, oftentimes you'll in your case it came down slowly, but it came down in some ways it came down quickly in certain areas. And because
Okay.
just like with tinnitus, where in meditation you focus on it and it's not
Mhm.
what you thought it was, and suddenly that's a good experience. With
Yeah.
phonophobia, when I'm working with someone, very quickly that person will start to have, in the first week or two, will start to have experiences once they're putting all these new tools and practices and strategies into place where they're exposed to some kind of sound that they expected to be bad and to affect them negatively, but the what actually happens is it's nothing
Yeah.
like they expected.
Very
And
fair.
suddenly you start getting evidence to the contrary of your fear and your beliefs. And oftentimes,
Mhm.
what I see with phonophobia is like initially you'll get this not a complete drop, but like a pretty big jump in the level of fear, a pretty big drop rather in the level of fear, and like a pop in quality of life. So I think you were starting to see that early on. Now there were still various environments where it was important to wear plugs and protect yourself. After all, you did have an injury, and we needed to make sure that
Yeah.
you
Right.
didn't over and you didn't re-injure it in the process of healing, right? Like
Right.
with a sound trauma, we should mention that. Like it is important to know that when you have a real acoustic trauma, an acoustic shock, like there is an injury that needs to heal, right? And whether or not it permanently affects your hearing, and in your case, fortunately it did not, there's still an
Right.
injury that needs to heal, and that takes time, right? And so it
Right.
is there is a place for plugs, but you don't want to be wearing plugs when you don't need them. And that was, that was something that we ended up having to work through over time. So you were saying it was a gradual and slow process, and that's certainly true. However, I was looking back through our notes.
Hmm.
Um, I'm pretty sure that so by we had worked we started together on April 1st,
Yeah.
and by June,
Hmm.
uh by June 2nd, like so only
Yeah.
2 months later, it's interesting to look back on these notes. You said you were doing a lot better overall. You had been
Hmm.
at your new job a few times and where you were around, people operating machines and there was no
Oh
issues.
yeah.
You had had no difficult tinnitus related
Mhm.
moments that you could recall. You had told me that the muffled feeling and the distortion was significantly improved. You were able
Hmm.
to listen. You were almost back up to listening to music in the car at the prior
Yeah.
volume levels. We still had a little bit of work to do on the hypervigilance and the fear, but like
Sure.
from a functional perspective, like in just 2 months, you had made a shocking amount of progress. Like often it takes a lot longer than that. So
It's
yeah, it was a
great.
gradual process, but just to your credit, you did a great job, and it happened a
Yeah.
lot quicker. 2 months to reach that point is a remarkable amount of recovery and successful results with habituation and desensitization.
Yeah.
So you did do a great job with that. Also, it's interesting. We should touch on this idea. I forgot to mention
Hmm.
this before. You, like many people, for most of your life, you preferred silence.
Oh
Like you
yeah.
very much had a love of just being alone in a
Oh
quiet
yeah.
place with your books and your phone and like
Exactly.
and like so when you're dealing like this there's a grief that happens there like you like because I work with so many people who experience this where they love
Hmm.
silence is so important to them,
Oh yeah.
and tinnitus and hearing issues feel like a significant loss, like
Oh,
right,
it's
and there's
like
like a
you want to have a
grieving
funeral
almost.
for it. It's like
Totally.
this person in your life, which is like it's like silence. It's like, oh my gosh, he's gone. I'm gonna have a funeral and grieve and be like, oh no, he'll never be back. Yeah, it feels
It's
like that.
scary. It's for someone who loves silence and prefers silence and quiet and solitude. Like that is
Yeah.
such a difficult thing to reconcile. But things
Yeah.
changed over the process. I remember having a couple conversations with you where it's just sort of you're like, it's really interesting. I'm sort of learning to appreciate sound in a way. Maybe it wasn't
Yeah,
exactly that
right.
you said, but so it might be interesting to have you kind of give a little like what is how did your relationship with quiet and sound change? And also, I imagine you can be in quiet again now. So touch on that too. If but how did your perception of and relationship to sound change over this process? I think that'll be interesting for people to hear about.
Yeah, I think silence is my was my refuge. I mean, I grew up in a split custody situation, so I was always changing households and I didn't have too many or too much control over certain factors
Yeah,
in my life. So I would just, whichever room I was staying in, I would just enjoy the silence and the books and stuff like
yeah,
that. So, yeah, it was a major, major adjustment. But I have really learned to appreciate sound. There's a station I used to listen to all the time in Portugal, and they play smooth jazz 24/7. And
sure, yeah,
I'm proud to say that since you and I have started working together, your meditations are great, and I also like the Happier app, and you had been guiding me in the direction of vocals only for a long
yeah.
time.
Getting away from ultimately that is the goal to like meditate in quiet. But yeah,
And I do that now.
that's
And
awesome.
I'm really proud to say that because it took me a long time to get to vocals only.
Yeah,
And my tinnitus, I can sit. Like you've always emphasized, it's sort of about speed to tools and also just, when you notice the tinnitus, because it's gonna be there, it's just about, okay, is it gonna trigger those responses in your nervous system? Are you gonna say, okay, it's there, it's not hurting me, back to what I'm doing,
yeah.
right?
And that just becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
That's a good way to like to frame it. But in the
Mhm.
moment, it's like you notice it and then you just go back to what you were doing because
Right.
nothing happened at that point, right? So can you one thing I always tell people is
Hmm.
when they're really grieving the loss of silence is that first of all, when you habituate the intensity and intrusiveness and oftentimes the volume of the tinnitus tends to come way down. That's
Yeah.
certainly true across the board. But whatever it comes down to, there might be something left at the end of the day. But what I always tell
Hmm.
people is that, like you can completely restore a
Hmm.
100% peaceful experience of just being in quiet. And I
Yeah.
imagine, I think I remember you telling me at a certain point that you had started reading again and even without noise and like were able to do that comfortably. So
Right.
would you agree that like, or would you say that now like you have regained some meaningful degree of silence, of comfort and peace and silence in quiet environments?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it silence. I just focus on what you said is peace. I
Yeah.
just think it's that quality of peace
Yes, definitely.
and it's a little different for me. I can still sit and use my phone and, I'll watch a movie and it's no different than hearing the air conditioning in the background. And a lot of
Totally.
this is because I don't have hearing loss. I just have tinnitus and it's the refrigerator on or the air conditioning. Like, yeah, I can still watch my movie. Yeah, I can still look at my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I prefer to listen to smooth jazz while I read. And I'd imagine in the future I'm gonna be preferring to listen to it while I work. My grandfather was a psychiatrist, excuse me, for many years, and he listened to smooth jazz while he worked. People
Yeah.
do it all the time.
Totally. You know, it's funny. Like I don't always if I'm doing email, like often I'll put on some music or some nature sounds or something just to
Hmm.
create some ambiance. But I'm at the point now too where it almost doesn't matter anymore. Like
Yeah, right.
silence, I can be in total silence. I can have some music on. I can have, and it's all equal now. Even though I still do have tinnitus. All right. Stefano, thank you so much for doing this
Yeah,
with me today. I think, this is going to be an important one to get out there. So many people out there are going through what you went through, right? Whether it
yeah.
was, a concert that they didn't have enough protection for, something with firearms, just sudden loud noise. Like the world is a noisy place, and accidents happen, right? Like even if
Yeah.
it's just, it could be a car accident, just the sound of the crash, right? Like the airbags deploying. Like there's just so many random loud sounds that can cause these kind of injuries and send us sort of spiraling into a nightmare of tinnitus and phonophobia and
Hmm.
dysacusis and sensitivity. And so getting out your story just to show that like, yes, it can get bad, but you can completely recover and not only restore quality of life, but in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, like things are probably better than they've been before because you're able to tolerate sound and deal with the noise of the world in a way that you weren't probably ever in your life, which is like a sort of an extra
Right.
little benefit. So that's all from us for today. Good to see
Yeah.
everybody, and I'll be back again with more of these videos in the future. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.